Hi, I'm Deric Rangell, certified probate specialist and 30-year veteran of probate real estate. And in this segment, I want to touch on living trusts and more specifically, what to look out for, how to verify what you might be being told. This is a situation on this screen where I was prospecting a lady who had lost her father. The father had a living trust with his first wife. But then after she passed away in 2002, about 10 years later, he remarries. But when he remarried, he never changed title from the living trust that he had with his first wife. And as I was prospecting this, there was a notice of default on the property. And I'm looking and I'm trying to figure out why isn't anyone doing anything about this? So I ultimately find the person who ultimately ended up being my client. One of the things that you have to be good at when you're doing this stuff is you have to be really good at understanding title and how things get to be. And the reason I bring that up, because as you can see, this is a copy, a living trust. So the background is, I'm looking at this, I reach a client, I ask them, why haven't you done anything? And she's like, well, the property's in the living trust and he left the property to his wife and here's a copy of it. And so my radar automatically goes up because this is the second wife. And second wives, and just anyone in general, once you know someone's dead and you're going to marry and occupy their property, it doesn't necessarily make it community property at that point because it could be vested in something else. But what this lady tried to do was to defraud the children of the man she married. And so what you're looking at here, I had to redact some stuff because there's some issues and this is all still ongoing business. But what is important to understand is that this lady presents a document that says that my client's father left his children nothing. And she was having a lot of difficulty with that. And you can understand why. Because her whole life, the father had said, I'm leaving you guys this house. It was just repeatedly done. I'm leaving you the house. Well, this step monster she was just a bad person. And she tried to literally steal the property by presenting a living trust that she had created, but the mistake she made was that there was no vesting deed from her deceased husband out of his living trust with his first wife to himself, and then from himself into the new instrument of the living trust that she was trying to pull the con on. So for me, I'm going through checking out title, and what I noticed was there was no vesting deed transferring his interest out from the trust to himself and then from himself to the new living trust that she was demonstrating to them, but it was purely fraudulent. And so I reviewed the document and I double checked, triple checked, called title, and they verified that there was nothing that they could locate that reflected a trust transfer to a new trust by the gentleman who'd passed away. And so my client, obviously really, really upset. It's an emotional thing when you think someone's trying to steal the property that you know your dad left you. At that point, she chose to engage me because she had spoken to many investors, real estate agents and whatnot. Nobody could read between the lines to understand what was defective about the trust situation. And so if you're in a situation where you might be a second wife or a second marriage or a third marriage or whatever, it's very common in California. But whenever there's a second anything after a first marriage, this is what you look out for. You look out for the trust transfer or the death of joint tenant recorded deed that corresponds with the death certificate or a divorce decree, but something has to take the interest out and then it can be transferred into something new. And so just because you see a trust, don't trust what you see, verify it. It's really fairly simple. For me, honest to God, I probably spent about 5 minutes on this case and it stood out glaringly to me because this is all I do all day. But the important thing is when you're dealing with stepfathers, stepmothers, whatever, there frequently is a bad dynamic with stepchildren and natural children and all that kind of stuff. This is not uncommon. This happens a lot. Because people they don't know anything about succession to assets. There's the internet, of course, where there's all kinds of bad information out there because there's poor context to the question being asked. So you kind of garbage in, garbage out. And this lady got the garbage out and she ran with it. And she had her stepchildren convinced that the dad left them nothing. And I was happy to deliver the good news that not only did the dad not leave them anything, that the trust that she was demonstrating that said it owned the property never did. It had never had the vesting into the trust that would give it standing controlling the asset of the property. So just because you see a living trust out there, or just because somebody shows you something, there's a corresponding paper trail of recorded deeds that have to align with what the document says. And this is different than when you have a good trust and someone deeds the property in and then they refinance and they forget to put it back in. That's a situation that's pretty easily fixable with getting a property back into a trust. But when there's bad actors, the average person just doesn't know. And this lady was ready to just take her medicine and move on. This is one of the good parts of the job I get to do, is when you find something and everybody in the market, every real estate agent previous to me contacting them whiffed, which means that it's a pretty high bar to get to somebody who can look at this 5 minutes later and say, yeah, I see a problem here, and then explain it to the person who has the problem, who can benefit by your solving it. And ironically, as soon as we got this situation rectified and we were able to have her file a probate petition, the step monster bails in Texas. So she got caught with her hand in the cookie jar. I caught her because I read this stuff. But if you're in a trust situation and you're not sure if it has standing or if it's real or if it's good, the place to look for is in the chain of title, the property being vested to the trust. So if you have any questions, feel free to sit there and drop a message, like and follow. I hope this helps somebody else out there because this happens more than people think. Take care all.